Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jessie Ransom, and I'm the Teaching and Learning Product Specialist for Ex Libris. Today, we're going to be looking at purchasing workflows. I will give you a heads up. We won't be getting into every single detail about the purchasing workflows. I want to give you an idea of how you can use Leganto to help make purchases based on what's being used in courses. Even though we won't get into every detail, I'm hoping that even for people who are familiar with some of the workflows, you'll still be able to get some tips today. Feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat. I'll answer those probably at the end, although I will keep an eye on it as we go and see if it makes sense to pick up questions along the way. So don't feel like you have to wait until the end of the session to put your questions in. You can put those in at any point. And the other thing I'll say is I know we have a lot of people on the call today who are using Leganto and have been using it for quite some time. So feel free to also put comments in the chat, even if you don't have questions. Maybe you have some comments that might be helpful to others. I know that it's very difficult to be collaborative in this type of webinar, but we can try. So feel free to use the chat for that as well. With that, let's go ahead and get started. So today, this is what we're going to be focusing on. We'll spend a lot of time looking at the purchase request workflow. I will actually show you what it looks like. If you're not familiar with it, you'll get to see what it looks like. We'll talk about manual and automatic requests. I will talk about some of the drawbacks for the purchase request workflow, some of the things that are challenging about using the purchase request workflow, as well as some potential solutions based on what other schools are doing. I'm not actually going to talk about Rialto, although I will talk about it very, very briefly. And then I'll also talk about some alternatives to the purchase request workflow in case for some reason you've decided it's not a good fit for you. So this is the plan for the day, the session. At a very high level, I just wanted to start with this, kind of to give you an idea of what's happening, the big picture of what's happening, and sort of what we're focusing on today. As I was building this slide, I was thinking it doesn't necessarily make sense to have Leganto and Alma pulled out separately because some of this could happen in either interface. I was really thinking about this from the perspective of the reading list, or maybe the person reviewing the reading list, and then acquisitions and the acquisitions workflows. That's kind of more the distinction here. But Leganto, as I'm sure you already know, is a great resource for understanding what is used in courses and then using that to decide what your library is going to purchase. I know some libraries try to purchase everything. Some libraries really purchase what fits within your collection development policy. Otherwise, we'll talk about different ways that you might think about these purchasing workflows. But generally speaking, Leganto can help you understand what's on the reading list or understand what instructors are using in their courses. Understand that within the context of the course. Is it something that's tagged as essential? Is it something where they need to read a whole book or just a chapter? You have all that contextual information. You have the details about what your library already has. Maybe you already have 2 print copies of an item, for example. And then from there, the system can inform acquisitions about what needs to be purchased. So the second piece, that I have labeled as Alma, but as I said, could also, the first part some of it could be happening in Alma. But the second part is really about the acquisition side, reviewing the purchase requests or the purchase requirements, and doing that within the context of the course. Again, some of that same information about the tag, what the library already has, making the purchase, and then updating the reading list. So this is really, what we're going to be looking at today. Actually, this is the workflow, focusing more on, less about actually the reading list itself and more on sort of this communication. I'm going to start with a quick demo of the purchase request workflow. In case you aren't using it, in case you haven't seen it, I just want to give you an idea of what this workflow looks like and point out a few things along the way. So here I already have a reading list. I have an item on my reading list. This is one that I brought in that my hypothetical instructor, who happens to be myself, brought in from Amazon. We don't have any library inventory for it, so this is something that we're going to try to purchase. That's where we are. So here I'm going to do a manual purchase request. There is the option to have purchase requests created automatically, and we'll definitely talk about that. But I'm going to do this manually so that you can see what's happening and see the screens involved. So here is now my purchase request form. It fills this form in based on all of the information. In this case, this is the information that came in from Amazon. I use the Cite It tool. So it uses the metadata from the citation to build out this purchase request here. I can specify if I want to make an electronic purchase or a physical purchase, but this is also something that I'm playing the part of several people, but my hypothetical acquisitions person would be able to review as well. So we can fill in that information. In this case, I am the requester. I'm the person placing this purchase request. So I am listed as the requester. I can get a notification about this purchase request. I am logged in right now as somebody who has, I think, all the roles in the system. So I have more options, or you may not see the options to fill in all of these details that I can fill in. I'm actually not going to fill this information in here. There's a note here. There's a configuration option, which is to have this note generated automatically or not. It pulls in some of the details about the course, the instructors, the number of students in the course, the number of copies we already have. In this case, we actually have the Amazon link as well. So that can be automatically added to the purchase request. I could potentially type into this box as well and add additional information. I'm actually not going to be doing any of that because that's not what I want to focus on today. But what I do want to talk about also is down here at the bottom. So it does also fill in this course information. So I am purchasing this, or I'm requesting purchase for this specific course, and we can see the details about the course. We can also see if there was a tag, we'd be able to see that information. We don't have any copies yet today. This created automatically by rule. We'll actually look at this in more detail as we get into the session a little bit further. But I mentioned that you can have purchase requests created automatically, and in that case, it would fill in this rule name automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save, which is just going to place this purchase request. So what I've done now is, as the person reviewing the reading list, I've placed a request for somebody else to go in and see if this is something that we can purchase. It automatically adds the alert here that the purchase request has been submitted, the details about when that happened and who did that, so we can see that information. So now I'm going to actually go look at the purchase request, and in real life, you're probably not doing this. You're probably not placing it and then going and looking at it. This might be a couple different people who are working on these purchase requests. It might be something that I do, and then a couple hours later, I look at this. So there's different, I'm acting as several different people here. So let's go in and take a look at the in review unassigned. They go into the unassigned queue by default. And now we can see we only have two, but the first one is the one that we just created. I want to point out that there's a flag over here created by reading list. We don't have very many, so we can't actually see that. Let me go to the ones that are assigned to me and see if we can see more. Yeah, here we go. So now we can see some of the different facet options that are available. I could filter specifically to the ones that are created from a reading list. I could also filter by some of these other options as well. We can see the requester. Down here below, these are all details coming from the course. So we can see the academic department, the course year, term, and then the tag. So I could also filter by any of these options as well. When I created that purchase request, I pointed out that box at the bottom that had all of the course information. It's adding this information in a structured way. So that's what generates these different tags that I have available here.
Hey, Jessie, we got a question that I think might be worth answering right now. Somebody asked, why was a rejection reason already populated before placing the request?
Let me go back. I think we can see it here. Let me open this one up. I actually don't know. I'm not sure about that. I'll have to look it up. I suspect we have something configured in a strange way in our demo site, but I will look into that. I'm not sure the best way to share, maybe in the follow-up email, Ray?
Yeah, that'll be good.
Okay.
Yeah, what you figure out, I'll include whenever we send the link to the recording and the PowerPoint.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Okay. Actually, what I did is I clicked on the purchase request. So that's what we're looking at now. Now I'm looking at this from the perspective of someone in acquisitions, though. Again, in real life, this would be two different people. So I would see new information. We already know that this is coming from a course, but our acquisitions person doesn't. So we can see the information about the request. I can see all of the details that we just looked at, including that course information. So acquisitions also has the details about how this is used in the course, what we already have available. And then I could make any changes to this if I needed to. If I need to change the metadata for this, I can do that as well. I clicked on create a new record, and I can now open these fields up for editing. So if I am not actually going to purchase, I don't know, this specific one, I want something different, we can do that. So I can edit this information if I need to. I can also fill in these details. Now I'm working as somebody in acquisition, so I could fill in the details for this. I could even fill in, the fund if this is something that I'm able to do, if this is something that I do at this step in the process. I can fill in that information. I could fill in the vendor. I'm going to go ahead and just save this as it is. But with the purchase request workflow, the idea is that I now know the information about what is required in courses or what has been requested for courses. And from here, I could go in and approve an order if this is something that maybe aligns with our collection development policy. If this is something that I'm going to be able to get, I can do that approve an order. I can do reject if we can't get it or if we won't get it for whatever reason. I can also send a query back to my requester. In this case, the requester is the person working on the reading list. That's the person who actually placed this request. So if I needed to follow up with them, I could do that. This has to do with the way tasks are assigned, so I could do that as well. I'm going to go ahead and do approve an order here. And the end of the purchase request workflow actually creates a PO line in Alma. So this has now created a PO line for this specific resource. It is now going to be either sent to our vendor or in review, depending on how our workflow is set up. That is really the basic purchase request workflow. That's all that I'm going to do in the demo. The rest of what we're going to do is slides, but I did want you to be able to see sort of what the process is, how it's intended to be used. So the purchase request workflow is a way to pass the information from one person to another, from one department to another about what's required in the course. I just realized there is one more thing that I wanted to show here, which is the reading list again. So if we go back over and look at this in Alma, in my reading list, I have a new alert here that the purchase request was approved. So it's a way to communicate the information about what's needed in the course and pass that to acquisitions, who makes the decision about what actually will be purchased or can be purchased and actually works with the purchasing side of things. And then here on the reading list, we can see the results of that. For that one, I also was the interested user, so I would have gotten an email letting me know that this purchase request was approved, so I would have that information as well. Okay, now going back to the slides. So I'm going to now go into some of the details of this. So triggering a manual purchase request, this is what we just did. I'm not actually going to go into the details again, but what I do want to point out is this: you don't see this out of the box with Alma. There's a specific flag that enables course reserves managers and operators to place purchase requests. It's not turned on out of the box. So if you do start to use purchase requests, decide to start using purchase requests, and you want to be able to do that from the reading list, this is something that support can turn on for you. So just open a support ticket and they can enable that option for you. So otherwise, this is what we saw with the manual purchase request workflow. There is also the option to have an automatic purchase request placed. In this case, based on certain conditions, a purchase request is kind of placed behind the scenes. I, as the person reviewing the reading list, don't have to do it. I would see the alert in my alerts that there was a purchase request, but it's happening based on specific conditions that occur. So here I'm going to talk about a couple of examples for how you might use these automatic purchase requests, really from a workflow perspective, based on what you're trying to accomplish here. So the first scenario is where the instructor is actually actively asking the library to purchase something. And in this case, I think the best way to handle this is to ask the instructor to add a specific tag. For example, purchase. You can set up a different tag if that makes sense to you, but have your instructors add a specific tag when they are specifically asking the library to purchase an item. And from here, you can set up rules. They are the citation processing rules. I have links in the slides to the documentation, but you can set up rules that will trigger these purchase requests. So here we can see the name of the rule, the input parameters. So there's several different options for the types of things that can be input parameters. This one, we have the tag of purchase, and then here the request format of electronic. So this is just a sample rule. Every single item that has the purchase tag added will generate an automatic purchase request. The purchase request looks exactly the same as the one that I just showed you when I created it manually, except that the rule name displays. If you'll remember, there was that field at the bottom that said created automatically by rule. So the rule name displays here. So otherwise, the purchase request is exactly the same. I, as the reading list reviewer, would see the alert that a purchase request had been created, and my acquisitions team would see a new purchase request with all of the course details, the tag, the item details, and so on. Another way to think about this is that the library is the one kind of making the decision about what to purchase. It's not necessarily just that the instructor gets to say, purchase this, don't purchase this, but that the library will look at all of the citations on the list or all of the citations that are tagged as essential, and then from there, see what can be purchased or see what does fall within your collection development policy. So in this case, you can set up more specific rules about the types of things or the types of situations where you might purchase something. You can create multiple rules based on your various input parameters. Input parameters can include the tag, which is the one that we just saw, but also the material type, the number of students that are in the course, the existing inventory that you already have, or any combination of these things. I have a note here at the bottom that the name of the rule displays on the purchase request. So this is a great trick to name your rule something useful, because the person who's reviewing the purchase request can look at that to get a little bit more background information about why this purchase request was created. Some of that contextual information that can make it easier to review this and decide if this is something that we should purchase or not. I have a couple examples here. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the examples, but I did want you to have them. So you'll have a couple of examples here. The titles tell you what it is. So this is one that's tagged as essential, and we don't already have electronic. So you can see the input parameters available in electronic, no, and the tag is essential. So for the input parameters, both of these conditions have to be met, or if we had more, all of these conditions have to be met. And then the purchase request would be created, and again, we'd be able to see the rule name on that purchase request. Just a couple more examples. Title is in stock, but not electronic. So it may be that we have a physical copy of this already, and that would be relevant to know as we're deciding if this is something we want to purchase. You can also see here an example where we're factoring in also the number of students in the course. And then finally, I think this is the last one. Essential, no E, fewer than one copy for students. You can also set ratios like this, item to student ratios, as part of these input parameters. The third scenario that you might have is where you want to ask the instructor if they want to purchase this item or not, if they'd like to make a purchase request or not. And for this, you can leverage the questions feature to get that additional information from your instructors about what they want you to do in certain circumstances. So with the questions feature, you can have a question that pops up when they add a book, for example, or a book that the library doesn't have, where you could say, you know, this is something that we don't already have. What would you like us to do with this? With the questions feature in general, it adds a tag based on the answer that the instructor gave, and then you can have a rule created based on that tag. So here's just an example to sort of put this in context. You've added a physical item, they're not available this semester, what would you like us to do? One of the options might be that I would like the library to purchase this item. If I were to select that option, it would add a tag. In our demo site here, it would add the purchase tag. And then this is actually the same as the first rule that we looked at, but when that tag is added, it goes through that process of creating the automatic purchase request. So those are a couple of different ways to think about automatic purchase requests. I'm just looking at the questions. I think I'll save the questions for the end here. So those are a couple of different ways to think about the purchase request or the automatic purchase request in terms of how you're trying to do this, how you work with your instructors, how you make these decisions at your library, you know, what you're trying to purchase. The purchase requests, the automatic ones and the manual ones can be used together. So you can say, you know, generally speaking, we want to have a purchase request created when it's tagged as essential and we don't have electronic and some other condition. But also you could have, you know, individual citations where for one reason or another, somebody, you know, reviewing the reading list might add a purchase request. So it's not one or the other. You can certainly have both. With the purchase request, you know, think about the rules, think about what you will actually want to review, need to review. If your rules are very broad, like everything, I don't know, everything added as essential, you're going to have a lot of purchase requests created. So the more broad your rules are, the more purchase requests have been created, but also from there, your acquisitions team knows what's being used in courses and can make the decisions about what to include. So this is something to think about, especially as you're getting started with these automatic rules, is, you know, thinking about what does acquisitions really need to review? You know, how many resources are you purchasing for courses? Do you want to start broad and narrow down from there? Do you want to start narrow and kind of see how it goes? Like everything else, you can always change the rules. You can always make new rules to change the way that these automatic purchase requests work. I want to talk briefly about the patron purchase requests that show up in Primo. There were a couple threads about this on the listserv recently. So Alma generally, you know, not having to do with Leganto, does support patron purchase requests, and patrons can place purchase requests depending on how you have it configured. So that request option can display in Discovery. There are, you know, rules. You can say it should only display to certain user groups or under certain conditions, but it can display in Discovery. You don't have to have it display in Discovery to do any of the things that I have just been showing you. So you don't have to have the option for patron purchase requests. You can potentially have the option display in Leganto. I pulled this screenshot here. So you can see that the purchase request is one of the options, but it doesn't display for everything because it displays as part of this physical availability box here. So this is where we can see the purchase requests. And also, if I were to click on that purchase request link there, that would be considered an individual purchase request or a patron purchase request, exactly the same as if I had requested this item from, you know, Primo, for example. it's not at that point a course-related purchase request. So just to kind of go into a little bit more what that means, this would be the information that I might potentially see if this is a patron initiated purchase request. There's a request or no field where the instructor or the person who's placing this purchase request can optionally add in some information. So this is some sample information that an instructor might add, as opposed to what we saw. Because we were specifically creating the purchase request from the reading list, we can see quite a bit more information about all of that context, which course is using this, how many students, which instructor, but also all of that relevant information. So I recommend that you really focus on the workflows that I've been showing you, these course-related purchase requests for when you're having requests for reading list items, that you use either the library staff to create these purchase requests or set up those rules. And that's where something like adding the purchase tag or asking the instructor to add the purchase tag is very similar to a purchase button that they click on and then they fill out a form. It's very similar. If you're going to just place a purchase request, sort of unconditionally anytime that they ask you to, you can set up a rule like the first one where anytime there is a purchase request or a purchase tag, it places a purchase request. I feel like I'm sort of talking myself in circles here. I've said purchase and purchase request so many times. I hope that you are still with me. So that's my recommendation, is that you focus on these course-related purchase requests, just because you get so much more information. The person reviewing the purchase request gets so much more information. This is also what will add the alert to the citation so that you can see that there was a request placed for this. So it links all that information together. So now I want to talk about some of the known issues with the purchase request workflow. So let's take a look here. The first one, and actually the two I'm going to talk about are really related here, but this is a big one for many, many libraries. When I placed that purchase request and completed it and said approve and order, it actually created the PO line. So we went and looked at that PO line that was created. If you do, let's say, all of your ordering or most of your ordering using an API or embedded order data, then there's no connection between the two PO lines. When I created the PO line from the purchase request, there's a separate PO line that's created, for example, when I order it through the Gobi API or the Oasis API. That process actually creates a PO line. So those two PO lines aren't linked together. So because of this, there are, I think, some obvious issues. You either have a lot of extra PO lines that aren't for things that you've actually ordered, or, and this is actually going to be my what I'm going to talk about, you're rejecting a lot of PO lines. And this is, when I talk to libraries about this, this is the way that most of them handle it, is they actually reject the PO line with a specific rejection reason that is not actually a rejection. It's something like order through Oasis, order through Gobi. So a reject reason that is indicating that you're actually going to purchase this, but then from there, it doesn't actually create the PO line for the item, and you can go and order it through whatever the platform is where you're going to be doing your ordering. So you can configure specific reject reasons, and I just point to the documentation here. And you can also specify that the notification letter won't be sent under certain circumstances. So by default, out of the box, somebody is listed as the requester of this item or the interested user for this item. If I am the course reserves person and I've manually placed the request, then I'm the interested user unless I were to change it. If it's created automatically, then the instructor is the interested user. So you may not want them to get a notification letter that you've rejected it if you haven't actually rejected it. So you can change the text of the notification letter, or you can have the letter not be sent. And I just have some instructions in here. I'm not actually going to do this, but if this is something that you want to do, you can customize that letter so that it doesn't send the reject letter under certain circumstances. And I just have a screenshot here. So you'll have these in the slides if this is something you want to play with here. The other thing that happens in this circumstance where you're ordering it somewhere else is that you're breaking the connection between the inventory that you end up getting. If we have all of this linked together, then I have my citation, I have my purchase request, I have my PO line, and my PO line is linked to my inventory. But if we break that connection because the PO line is not actually the right PO line, then the inventory isn't going to be linked back up again with the citation. So in this case, you need to update the citation with that inventory information. Also potentially new metadata. I mentioned that I could change the ISBN, I could order something different. We may need to update the citation with that new metadata. So you can do both of these things with the resource locate. So the resource locate is something that you can run individually from the citation. It's one of the citation actions in Alma. There is now, I believe this came out in August, the option to do a manual locate. So here you have more control over linking this up with the right resource in your library inventory. If you need to change the ISBN or search without ISBN or whatever it may be, you can now do a manual locate. You can also do the resource locate process in bulk using the process and enrich citations job. So this is a job that you can run against a set of courses or set of courses based on the course date. I'm saying this wrong. It's not actually against a set of courses. You can run this based on the course dates. You can run this based on other parameters like I think the citation status is one of the parameters. So you have different ways to customize how you're running this job, but you can run it in bulk. And it will essentially do the resource locate in bulk. And what that will do is link it up with your inventory and also update the citation information. So this is something that you can do regularly, especially at the beginning of the term, right before the term starts. If there's times of the year where you're doing a significant amount of purchasing, you can do this, you can run this job on a regular basis. It is on our roadmap to run this as a scheduled job. It's not available today, but it is on our roadmap for the second half of 2022. So for now, it was something that you would need to just remember to run on a regular basis. The last thing that I want to talk about here, you'll remember this slide from before. So this is really the workflow that we've looked at, getting the information from the reading list, passing that information to acquisitions, who reviews the information, makes the purchase, and then updates. We can update the reading list. So this is the slide from before. I did want to point out that if you have Rialto closes that loop because in this case, you're doing the ordering in the same system. Rialto is available from inside of Alma. So in this case, from the purchase request, you'd be able to review the potential offers, the things that you could purchase, and make that purchase right from there. I'm not going to talk about this because I know it's not relevant for many of you, but I also know it is relevant for many of you. So I just wanted to point this out, that this is a way to close that gap here where the purchase is actually happening. There's a video, I have a link to a video in the last slide so you can see what this workflow looks like if you're using Rialto or if you're going to be using Rialto and you want to see that. All right, let's go now and take a look at alternative options. And so this is alternatives to the purchase request. So there are certain reasons why libraries decide not to use purchase requests, mostly related to what I pointed out, that you might end up having to reject a lot of purchase requests. It may just not work with the way that you communicate with acquisitions, which the way that you do ordering. You might just do things differently for various reasons. It is really how let's see, when we were starting to build Leganto and building out this workflow, this is really the sort of intended workflow using purchase requests, but I do want to talk about other options. And essentially here, what we need is some way to notify acquisitions that this is something that we would like to purchase. This is really what I'm talking about, is situations where somebody else is doing the purchasing. Somebody else needs to know that this is on a reading list and that it might be a candidate for purchase. So another way to do that besides the purchase request is the tags or custom citation statuses. Both of these are a way to indicate on the citation that this is something that we would like to purchase, or is a candidate for purchase, or however you want to phrase that. So some way to indicate that on the citation besides the purchase request. So really the two easiest to use ways are tags or custom citation statuses. With this, in terms of which one is better, I think it depends on how you're using them, who's doing the work, and also when you're doing that work. It's much easier to change the citation status if you're working in Alma, but it's much easier to work with tags if you're working in Leganto. So this is the way that I would encourage you to think about it if you're trying to decide one or the other. If you're working in Alma and you're looking at a reading list or a list of citations, you could potentially check several different citations, check that checkbox and change the status to a custom status, which would be something like, I don't know, review for purchase or something like that. If you're working in Leganto, you don't have that option. You don't have the option to select a specific status for the citation, but you do have the option to very easily add tags to the resource, and you can even select multiple resources and add the tags in bulk. So this is something to think about, is at what point are you editing the citation? Are you adding this information? Are you flagging this as a candidate for purchase? And what system are you doing that in? And I think that will tell you which one is better, whether you should use the citation status or the tags. The second thing here is, once you have a way to designate that the citation is something for review, then you need to have a way for acquisitions to understand that these are things that you're requesting for purchase. So in this case, I also have two options. The first is through Alma, and in this case, whoever it is from acquisitions would take a look at my citation tasks and just filter them. Either way, you can filter based on the tag, or you can filter based on the citation status. So I would just look at it. I would see all of these resources which have been flagged one way or another, and I can decide, or from there, see if these are things that I can purchase. So in this case, acquisitions is actually looking at the reading list and using that as the source of information. The other option here is to use analytics and you create a report which can then be shared with acquisitions about which resources have been flagged, again, one way or another. So this I'll talk about a little bit more. From here, you would build a report that identifies the resources. And obviously you can include as much metadata, as much of the contextual information about the course, whatever information is relevant. Once you've created the report, you can set it up as a scheduled report, which can then be emailed out to the appropriate people on a regular basis. So scheduled reports can be sent every day, they can be sent every week, whatever makes sense for your workflows. You can subscribe, maybe not you, somebody can subscribe specific people to a report, or people can subscribe themselves to a report. Once you've created a scheduled report, you can have a list of people who receive this on a regular basis. The information here, of course, is always going to be current as of the previous day. So this is another thing to think about. How urgently are you making these purchases for your course materials? If the information doesn't get to acquisitions until the next day, is that good enough? This is something to just think about as you're deciding how to handle this. I have here in the slides a sample report, so we can see just one basic report. I don't have very much information in here, but what you would need is the tag if that's what you've used to designate things. I have the tag is filtered only to the ones that have been flagged as purchase. The idea here is that, you know, the library is adding this purchase tag, and that's what's, you know, triggering this. If you were doing this based on the citation status, of course, that would be your filter instead. I have just basic metadata. You would potentially need more than that, as well as more information about the course. So you can always add more information here. And then you can also think about ways to filter this to, you know, the most recent information. I have here this, what we're looking at right now, will give us the citations that have been modified in the last 7 days. That's what we're looking at. May not be, you know, exactly right, you know, timeline for you. It could be citations that have been added in the last, you know, X number of days. Maybe you want to do every 3 days. Here I was kind of thinking about weekends, so that's where this is coming from. But you know, you can think about kind of how to get the report of the right list of citations, as well as the additional fields that will be relevant, fields about the course or fields about the citation, the metadata for the citation, so you can see that information. The last thing that I have in here is the permalink. So we can talk about that in a little bit. This is just the results of that sample report that I had, but you can see here that there's actually a link to this. So it is possible to create a permalink from an analytics report to a Leganto citation. This is something I want you to know is possible. It's a nice trick. It does link to it in Leganto. So in this case, you know, my person who's getting this report on a regular basis would be able to see the details about the item that is the candidate for purchase, you know, the context of how it's used in the course, and then potentially access it in Leganto if this is something that you wanted to let them do. If maybe they need to go in and see more details, or maybe this person is even adding a tag or removing a tag in certain circumstances. So this is an option. I have here in the slide some instructions for how you would do that. It just walks you through that. So I won't walk through that. And I'll just share these slides with you after the session, again, in case this is something that you wanted to do. I'll point out this is true for lots of circumstances. You don't have to think about it only for these acquisitions workflows. You may have other workflows where it's helpful to be able to link to a specific citation or a specific reading list. So these instructions will be relevant for other situations as well. All right. I hope you're still with me. I feel like I talked very fast. We are actually at the end. I'll point out there's one more slide here that has a few extra things, the documentation about the purchase requests. This video here is very similar to the demo that I gave, although it walks through the automatic purchase requests as well. And then there's also the video that I mentioned about Rialto. So you'll have those links available. But with that, we have time for questions. I hope I'll be able to answer your questions. So let's go here. There was the one about the reject reason, which I'll look up. There's another one here. When reviewing a purchase request, when would you click to create a new record as opposed to leaving it as using this existing record? Let me go into Alma. So let's take a look at this. I should have set up a couple of additional examples. I think we can just create another one on here. So actually, let's talk about this. So here I have one. You know what? Sorry, thinking out loud here. I think I'm gonna add another one from Amazon. So let's go to Amazon, and we'll just add another item to this list. So then we'll have a couple different examples. Let's see. Sorry, bear with me while I do some kind of stupid searches just to get something onto my list. I'm gonna do this psychology. Oh, let's see, read people like a book. We'll do that one. We'll add this read people like a book to our list just so we have something else to look at. I feel like I want to say, like, pay no attention to what's happening behind the curtain. I just want to get another example onto my reading list. So we'll do that. So what we have here are now two different types of examples. When I created the purchase request for the second one, it actually creates a bib record. So now there is an MMS ID for this one. As soon as you create the purchase request, it creates the bib record. And of course, the bib record has an MMS ID and it links all that information together. So this is actually the bib record that was created. I didn't fill in any information. So this is basically the bib record that was created based on the Leganto citation information, which came in from the Cite It tool, very similar to what I just did. I'll point out here, there is also this option to have a field automatically added when bib records are created. You can customize which field it's going to be and what it's going to say. So that's where this is coming from, is there's a configuration to have that automatically added. If down the line you need to be able to identify these, maybe you go in and clean them up, fix them. So there's a way that you can very easily find them. So the bib record was created as part of the purchase request process. So now I already have a bib record for this, whereas this one I don't. I can see that. I can't click on anything. This one I can click on it and view the information. There's no MMS ID here either. So this is, if I were to go in and place a purchase request again on the same one, let's say I also want to get a physical one. If I use existing record, it'll link it to that bib record that already exists, that MMS ID that we just looked at. Whereas I can also do create a new record, open this up for editing, and edit this information and change it. So it'll relink, it'll create a new bib record, and then it'll relink my purchase request and my citation to that new bib record. So that's what's going to happen here if I change that. If I go back to the other one, this is where I think it gets a little bit strange. So if we go in here, this is one where we don't have a bib record. And I'm going to click on purchase request. When I did that, it actually created that bib record. So now when I say use existing record, it's actually created a record using this information here. So I can use that information. If I do create a new record, the other one kind of disappears. So in this case, it doesn't really matter which one I use. I'm creating a new record either way because I don't already have a record. So I hope that that makes sense. That's really the difference, is if you don't already have a record, you're creating one as part of the process. If I need to open this up for editing, I can do that and change it. If I say use existing, it's using just the citation metadata to create that record. It matters more, I think, when you're looking at one that already does have a bib record. And in that case, I can link my purchase request to the same bib record or to a different one. Okay, let's see. When using an alternative method to purchase requests to purchase items, what's the best way to associate the new item to the citation in Leganto? This is a great question as well. This is actually the same. So the purchase request workflow, as I did it, where I finished the process and I created the PO line, linked all this together. Here I actually have my inventory, which I haven't even ordered yet, but my inventory is linked to that PO line. So it's also linked to this bib record. If we are not using that PO line, then there's no link between if we're not using the purchase request workflow, there's no link between the inventory that we acquire and the citation. This is exactly the same as if you're ordering with the API. If you're rejecting a purchase request, that you're breaking that link. So in that case, what you would need to do is run that resource locate to link it up with your newly acquired inventory. You can do that on an individual citation. I don't think it'll actually work here, but you can run the resource locate on an individual citation. This is the new manual locate that I mentioned. So if I run a manual locate, what it does is it actually opens up the option to search for a resource. It does a search by default. It actually does the resource locate search by default, but I can search for something specific and link to a specific item with the manual locate. So you can do that. Most of the time, I would say the better option is to do it in bulk using that process and enrich citations job. Let's just go and take a look at this real quick. This is in the fulfillment menu. So process and enrich citations. This is what I was stumbling through before. So you can have a certain date range where it's going to look at citations that are on reading lists. You know, I'm thinking of this like for the current term or for the upcoming term. You can run it against a specific course. You can run it against only reading lists or citations that are in a specific status. So the first part has to do with which citations or which courses specifically this is going to run against. And then this is actually the resource locate. So this job can be used to run the resource locate. You would check this box. You can specify what's going to happen if you have more than one match. It can either send it to you to look at manually, or you can link to, you can choose, you can prefer one over another based on the inventory type. So here we've said link to the electronic one first. If there's no electronic one, link to the physical one. If there's no physical one, link to the digital one. So you can do that. You can also specify that it's only going to run on certain types of citations. I could say, you know, I only want to run this on books, or, you know, something like that. You can configure that information. So this is the way to do it in bulk. All right, I'm going to pause for a minute here. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. Those of you who know me know that I can keep talking. So I will also mention that you can customize how the resource locate works. There is a configuration a little bit newer, I think maybe in the last year. There's now a configuration about where you can set which fields are going to be used to do the resource locate. If you don't make any changes, if you haven't made any changes, it's title and ISBN or ISSN, but you can change it. So you can add different fields, additional fields, you could remove fields. You can also specify if the fields are going to be combined with an AND operator or an OR operator. So in other words, it attempts to make a match by title or ISBN, or title and ISBN. You can customize that. And you can also customize that the resource locate is only ever going to be run on specific types of inventory. So in this case, you would probably want a broader list than just books, but you know, books, articles, journals, I don't know, other things. The reason for that is you may not want to run the resource locate on, trying to think of some of the other material types, PowerPoints, presentations I think is one of them. You know, there's a long list of material types that Leganto supports that are probably not Alma inventory, or things that are going to be managed in your library inventory. So you can also customize it so that it never runs the resource locate on, you know, certain types of resources. So this is a configuration option that's available, is customizing how this resource locate process works. In case you're not familiar, the resource locate will look for matching library inventory to match your citations up with your library inventory. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions coming through. Ray, is there anything that I missed?
Nope, I'm not seeing anything either. I just want to remind everybody that when you leave, a survey will pop up, and we would very much appreciate your feedback on this session. And let us know if there's anything else you'd like to see us present in the future. And other than that, I think we're good to go, Jessie. So thank you so much for this excellent presentation. And thank all of you for attending. We will send out the recording and the PowerPoint by end of business tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody. I just put my email address up. Feel free to reach out with any questions that you have, but otherwise, thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, everybody, have a great day.